All right, it is now just coming to 15 minutes after 7 local time. Time for The Way It Is. And this is where we look at what has been happening politically speaking. And we have a very able panel to look at what has been going on right here. Just a reminder that you're welcome to participate, and you can do that via social media. The Twitter handles are going to be displayed. The hashtag is Morning Express KTN. And we do have Michelle Ngele on standby. She's going to be looking at, what's happening on social media as we continue with the conversation. But let me start by introducing the panel that we have this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Senator Elizabeth Ongoro joining us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We also have Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. And let's start off with what has been on the headline, the better part of last week, and it seems not to have found a resolve. And this is the IEBC. Let me start with you, Madam Senator, with your thoughts on where we are so far and the fact that we only have 49 days to go before the general election. And it seems the closer we get to the election, the more our confidence, or some people's confidence in IEBC, is eroded.
Thank you very much. In answering that, I really want to take all of us Kenyans back to what happened in 2007 and the narrative that followed thereafter when we were trying to reconcile Kenyans to move forward. And I think we were all in agreement that we should never, as a nation, experience what we went through in 2008. And I remember almost everybody was in agreement that we saw a lot of indicators, but which we took for granted. And if you have that in mind, and if you bear in mind the repercussions of everything that happened, I mean the post-election violence and the wounds that are still yet to heal, then anybody who notices anything that is bringing doubt, that is casting any doubt on this election process, and anybody who can say it and say that even with that, I mean, it's too expensive to cancel or to retract because, we have already given the tender. Well, I could excuse IEBC if they didn't have the benefit of knowing that this is a clear case of conflict of interest. But now that they do, I would expect them to be the independent institution that we expect them to be, and to cancel that tender. I mean, they could be excused, and in case they didn't have that evidence that this company and its owners had a close relationship and ties with a very interested party in this process. And we are talking about a company that is going to print our ballot papers, having very close ties with a person who is going to be in the race. Now, where does that leave us? Even if you placed this before any panel, tell me. And we are talking of an institution that is supposed to pride in being independent. Now, all other narratives are being put on the table. Some people are talking about Raila Odinga having ties with another farm in South Africa. But that is neither here nor there. We're talking about a farm that has been awarded the tender. Whether he knows other farms, those farms have not been awarded. As Kenyans, we would be very correct to say that these two farms who have been advancedly mentioned, both the one from South Africa with all those claims of ties, and this one that has been awarded, should be disqualified. And then we are left with credible farms that do not have any ties at all to any politician. And now that, in fact, the most shocking thing is that they are not denying. They have actually even accepted that, yes, for about 3 years, we have ties with this farm. But then, they visited State House and they were talking to the president on other matters. Now, if I was a person to make a decision, that is a case for disqualification.
All right. And what about those who feel, first of all, in IEBC, the first eye on IEBC is independent. But there are those who feel that so far, it's like IEBC is trying to dance to whoever, calls the tune. And if you look at the opposition, it's been consistent. We have the Isaac Hassan-led team was hounded out of office for reasons that we all know, the chicken gate. We have, after that, we had, for instance, the voter register, which NASA said needed to be cleaned up. They had an issue with KPMG when they were awarded the responsibility to clean out the voter. Now we have, again, the tender, it's one thing after the other. Is there anything that will settle? the
Yeah, but that
opposition.
is the case. That is the case, really. That is the question. The fact that it has been one thing after the other doesn't stop. Yet somebody or an independent Kenyan or even the same person pointing out, raising out, you can raise 1,000 issues so long as those issues are valid. Because it doesn't stop me that now I've already raised 10 issues. No, I'm now noticing something else. I'm not going to talk about it because you see, I've already talked about other issues before. That simply states that all this we have been talking about as the opposition, what Raila Amolo Odinga has been talking about has not been corrected, really. We have institutions, we have change of guards, but we don't have a change of systems. We don't end up with people who walk into those institutions with a changed attitude of being independent. We don't have, we keep changing players, but the whole script remains the same.
It remains the same.
Yes.
All right. Same forest, different monkeys, some would call it. But Ambrose, what are your thoughts on what's going on so far and the fact that IEBC doesn't seem to be doing much to even improve the image that they have with the electorate?
I think let's first of all toss that question the other way around. Is there anything positive, anything praiseworthy that NASA or his presidential candidate has ever said about IEBC? You can't just be bad 100% unless it's a scheme to hound people out of office, knowing that the election date is fixed by the Constitution. Then after that, we have a constitutional crisis. I see that could be part of the scheme.
They may not be good 100%,
yes,
but that does not stop issues being raised,
yes,
especially if you feel that they may affect.
Yes, my question is there that 1/4%? Have they ever said here they have done well? I think on the tender issue, we should look at the election date, the number of days remaining, and the possible problems that the printing would cause if it went ahead. Last Monday, when I was here, I said there is a part that IEBC also does not play. There are certain crucial things that when they want to do, they consult. They call in the NASA and they call in the Jubilee and they say, this is a direct tender we are awarding. We are awarding it to this Dubai company for this reason and that reason. Now, again, on their part, they have also not done that. And it is easy for NASA to come and say, this is purely Jubilee. As we talk now, NASA has raised issues. There has been some evidence that raises issues of probity. And that IEBC has to come out clearly and say, this is the way we want to deal with it. They have to come out and tell NASA, tell Jubilee, tell Kenyans that the better way for our country is either we go on with this tender, but with the following safeguards, including having a team to go and check the process, whether it will be biased or this. But just ordering and saying there's nothing, again, that I would not, as a staunch Jubilee, accept. But I would also urge our counterparts in NASA, look at the wider context of the country. Election date is 8th. The ballot papers are being printed. They are not being given to Jubilee to keep in their godowns and to distribute. So that as much as people could be related, the way I'm related to you, to your brother and to everybody, anytime something comes in, no, this one comes from Lula and they cannot do this. Let us look at the wider context of the country. Is it possible at this time to cancel that tender and still have elections? If the answer is yes, you follow it. If the answer is no, please. But yours every time, kelele. We can't run a country and run an election on the kelele alone. Give solutions.
Mr. Weda, I am shocked that a credible lawyer, can talk the way Mr. Weda is talking. He's talking about how expensive this process would be in case it was cancelled. If I may ask, how expensive do you think? What cost can we attach to the life of one Kenyan? And in case we were to lose Kenyans because something would happen, because people have already cast doubts in the process, and therefore anybody now reacting in any manner after the elections, and how much do you think it costs to bring up one Kenyan. If you were to look at it that way, then you would state that it is very, very cheap to cancel a tender. And actually, I wouldn't even expect that farm to take anybody to court, because they were supposed to have put on the table their interest. They were supposed to have notified IEBC, for example, of their affiliation, their close affiliation to State House before they were awarded. I mean, really, in any court of law, they cannot win that case, because they should have, if I have close ties with you and you sit in a panel awarding a contract, I am supposed, it is incumbent upon me to reveal that association. That is what is called conflict of interest. Now that they did not do that, if the contract is taken from them, they cannot go to court in any court of law anywhere in the world to state that they are supposed to be paid. That is one. Secondly, when we talk about how expensive or how cheap, then let us put the lives of Kenyans on the one side and the cost of cancelling this contract and awarding it to yet another firm on the other. And thirdly, I also don't understand how any lawyer of your repute can sit here and tell us that we are supposed to be singing songs of praise to the Jubilee administration. We are supposed not to sing songs of praise. We are supposed to notify the Jubilee administration and Kenyans as whistleblowers when something goes wrong. And we are talking about all these processes that IEBC has been involved in were geared towards ensuring that Kenyans enjoy the benefit of a free and fair and credible elections, period. Anything that casts aspersions on that negates everything else that they have been doing. And we are talking about the most important aspect of this entire process that we have been looking forward to. So now that they have done 99 things and then negate it absolutely by doing one incredible thing that now tells me, even as a candidate, where I'm going to be on the ballot for the seat of Ruaraka parliamentary, that, I mean, really, I mean, the Jubilee candidate who is with me on that race could have the benefit, or I don't know which kind of benefit. I mean, I'm already doubtful. Okay. Now that I'm doubtful, Mr. Weda, I mean, yes. Mr. Seda, really, I am talking about a process that is holding the economy of this nation, that is holding the lives of 45 million Kenyans, that is holding the institution that is supposed to be built upon by yet another generation. All right. And it will not cost us to cancel this contract, give it to a firm, not the South African farm, not this farm that has been really mentioned, but something else that is not, that can be accepted. All right, I'll come back to you. And of course, the question will be whichever farm that will be given, would that pacify the opposition at that point? But Ambrose, we're looking at the cost. We cannot really quantify and say that it's going to be too expensive to change that now when we look at the credibility of the vote. Because the credibility of the vote in this case is king. The credibility of the vote must be protected at all costs, because that is what caused us to have the 2007-2008 post-election violence.
I think let's get this thing clear. I didn't talk about the cost in terms of money. I talked about the cost in terms of election date of 8th of August is fixed by the Constitution. Therefore, are we able to print the ballot papers in a new institution with the time remaining? That is the consideration. If we are not able, then that is the discussion that IEBC should be having with our colleagues, saying the days we have, and these are the processes that are required to print ballot papers. For that reason, we can transfer it or let it remain here. I didn't talk about lives. I am not planning to kill anybody, and I hope you people are not planning to cause violence. And we don't want anybody to die because of elections. It is in terms of timing, planning, and just allow me to talk. This, you know, is not Ruaraka where you people shout. No. This one now is
you can't even
number two, please.
No, you have to
allow me, madam. I have a lot of respect for you. You are great, Senator. Number two, I didn't say you praise Jubilee. I said IEBC. I say there are things they have done bad, but there are also things they have done well. So that when we bash them too much, And remember that Honorable Odinga is a big voice. When he bashes you in the morning, at 10, at noon, lunchtime, you just die. And IEBC is just slowly dying through bashing. There are certain things which can be done through dialogue. And this dialogue requires that IEBC calls you people on the table, and you look at the way forward so that we have an election, unless you have sensed some form of defeat and you don't want these elections, which will be tragic.
Allow Senator to respond.
I want to agree with you that they needed to have called us like yesterday. From the first day that Raila notified Kenyans of this anomaly, they should have called us.
And they did.
And they should have cancelled that tender the next day. This is what we are talking about.
They called the principals.
Yes, and then they did nothing about it. Now, what I'm stating is this. Yes, it is possible to have a new contract, and I believe that there are farms out there with the capacity, with the financial muscle to give us the number of ballot papers that we require in just even about a week. But how can we say that it is not possible when we have not even sent the invites? We have not advertised, even internationally or even locally, to state that we need a farm with this capacity, and can we prove that you are able to deliver this thing within time? So we can't, sit in a closure and keep insisting that it is not possible when you have not given the farms out there the opportunity to state that they are able to do it. And I believe that there are farms that are able to do it, even much more.
Okay. Weda,
yes.
What would it cost? And cost here is not necessarily shillings and cents.
Yes.
What would it take for IEBC to cancel that tender, even if it's just for the benefit of having public support and people feeling that at least now they have cleaned up? What would it take for IEBC to cancel that tender and get another tender? Like Senator Ably says,
yes.
It would take us, between now, we have 49 days before the election.
Yes.
If they set out that tender right now and they can single source legally, they can still get another farm that is neutral, and we still have the ballot papers in time. What does it cost for them to do that?
I think obviously they'll have to pay the Dubai farm, because they have given them a contract, they have set in motion arrangements to print those papers. And in the contract, we'll have to pay. That is not a big price to pay, in my view, as a country.
Compared to what we could pay if there's lack of
then we have the only major consideration is whether you can find another farm and have it be ready to print those ballot papers in time. If that is what they were to consider, okay? And I know the farm that printed the last ballot papers, although I don't know whether NASA will give us guarantees that if you give another farm, they'll not make noise. But if that was the only thing that would bring peace and NASA would come for elections quietly and nicely, then I think it's not a bigger price for the Kenyan people to pay. But going forward, IEBC, if I were you, I would have insisted we have a consultative team. Like you see a coach, not a coach, a referee in the field. Normally it talks to the two captains and for the two teams. There now should be two teams that when major decisions are being taken, like printing of ballot papers, or even disqualifying people, like if you want to disqualify my sister here, then there's consultation so that we have a fairly peaceful atmosphere that does not generate that tender. And the evidence that I see coming up, it would be a lot easier, in my view, to let it go and then give a new one, if timing
will allow. Senator, if IEBC tomorrow woke up and said that they've cancelled the tender and given it to somebody who's neutral, neither the two farms that are in question, would that be now, can we say then IEBC is ready for the general election, from your opinion?
Yes, and even before I state that, it is really, really sad when you have the likes of my brother here who calls any voice of reason noise. You know, it is a sad situation because you don't expect Kenyans to be like a flock of sheep, always flocking towards their slaughter, even when there's some danger, that nobody should raise an alarm, that somebody else, like my brother here, will call it noise. Anyway, I excuse him. But coming back to your question, it is doable. It would at least raise, hope. It will bring alive, the hope that Kenya so much needs. It will cause anybody else who now wants to cast aspersions on that process to at least have some confidence that we are talking about some semblance of democracy.
But so far, everything they have done to answer to the questions that have been asked don't seem to satisfy. So it looks like we're getting to a point where nothing really would pacify the opposition in terms of IEBC being prepared. Is there an option, or is there a thought that possibly, if they're not ready, then...
But now, what we're talking about now is this tender process. And the only thing they need to do is to cancel this tender, this contract, and give it to a neutral firm.
But you'll agree with me that there's been a constant barrage of attack on IEBC from the opposition?
If there is a constant of misdoings, if they're always doing things which are not satisfactory to the other team, then there would be that. Don't remember that the opposition has really been tolerant, really. And you remember even the other times when almost everything we have raised eventually has come, Kenyans have proven that there were facts. There was truth in it. So why would anybody think that, even when Raila talked about this, the first reactions were like, oh, it's not true. And then eventually they started accepting that, yes, we know this farm. Yes, they came to State House. Yes, we have been engaging with them for 3 years. So I think there's a Raila phobia amongst certain people or a class of people who anything that comes from Raila is opposed, even if it really means well for this country.
All right.
But we have to live with that because now we can't change that mindset. But I still want to state, anybody who loves this country, anybody who looks at the bigger picture, as my brother here talks about, anybody who wants a future for this country must allow this country to lay the foundation stones of justice, of true democracy, of systems and institutions that are truly independent, not institutions that appear to be independent but are being controlled robotically, by some forces from wherever,
All right, Ambrose, I want to take a short break, but we'll be right up. Just hold that thought, and in case you're joining us now, this is The Way It Is on Morning Express. With me, we have Elizabeth Ongoro, Senator, and we also have Ambrose Weda. And, well, currently we're looking at the IEBC, but we'll also be looking at some statement that has caused uproar again by the NASA opposition flag bearer, Raila Odinga, and with the likes of Edan Duale saying that he should be arrested. That forms the headlines of the Standard this morning. So that's what we're going to be having on The Way It Is. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.